Okay, fix your hair. The recording has started.
I hope Jennifer's going to come. It would be really nice to see her.
She's on
Hi,
the
Adrian.
agenda. Hi, Adrienne. Hi, Eric. Hi, Jerry.
Oh, there she is.
Speaking of Jen, there she is. Drum roll.
Hello, I'm here, and for some reason, I can't get my video to work. Oh, hold on. I might be able to do it. Let's do this. Try it again. No? Okay.
So Adrian, I do have to call you out. I see a Christmas tree still in the background.
Still, it's barely, school hasn't even started yet. And in 2020, when nobody visited anybody, it stayed up until, I think, March. Without the lights and decorations. But my cat really loves to lay under there, and it wasn't like anybody was coming to my house, you know, during that time. So
Actually, down in Mexico, tomorrow's the big day.
Yeah, Epiphany, Three Kings.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big day down here. Yeah. Along with all the other days. Yeah.
So Ann, tell us what the temperature is.
It's cold here. It's 79. No, with humidity of it's only 57, but the locals are wrapped up in down jackets, and I walked out to the Malecon and I had a jacket on. I evidently have acclimated here, so.
So I have no formal power or authority here, but I would ask for a censure for Ann for being in a climate that's 60 degrees warmer than we are.
Hey, I told Adrian I had an offer tonight to go listen to music and dance. Last night I said yes, and this morning I woke up and I went, no, ethically I can't do that. So I'm here. It was a rough night.
Thank you for your service.
Tell you. I had dreams, and I woke up saying, okay, I gotta be here. I was gonna go to Jerry and say, you can do it without me, and yeah, so I'm here. Not suffering at all.
yes, thank you for sacrificing one night of dancing for us, Ann.
Found a guy who's teaching me to dance. This is like heaven. So it'll be fun.
All right. So looking around, I think we already have 6 folks here. I assume others are going to be here. But I'm not sure who RPK is.
A guest is earlier, he said.
Yeah, it's Paul Crow.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. And I don't see any call-in visitors at this time. So let me just double, and then Ann is, maybe she went dancing. 6. Yeah. Okay, so we do have quorum. Hopefully some others will join, but I also want to be cognizant of the time, so we can, with quorum, we can go ahead and get started. So Happy New Year. Thank you all for being here. I want to call this meeting to order, and also just thanks for being here, especially I know that this has been a busy time for everyone, and I know that we were a little bit late in getting agendas out, and we in the past have often not had January meetings, but we had this emergency rental assistance that the RFP committee met about on yesterday. That's the priority for making sure that we get that approved and get that through and move that to the next step. So I appreciate all of you being here. Was everybody able to see the agenda, or do I need to share it before? Anyone need me to share it before we approve it? You do, Jerry, you'd like me to? So I've never done it on this particular thing. I've, done it everywhere else. Okay, let's see.
I
And
just
do you have
sent it
something?
to Jerry,
Oh, okay.
so you know.
Okay. Yeah, I think I haven't ever given permission for WebEx to look at my computer. So hold on one second. Doing extra steps. Oh, it's going to make me quit and reopen. Okay, so I'm not going to be able to share the agenda. Is somebody else able to share the agenda?
Yeah.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, it was going to make me quit. Okay, so now that we can see the agenda, are there any changes that we need to make to this? And if not, could I get a motion to approve?
So move.
Second, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember and Barry. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Does everybody have at least a snapshot of this so that we can get back to the screen where we can see everybody? All right. Thank you, Catherine. You can go ahead and stop sharing. Thank you so much. I didn't see, do we have, and I can't see everybody's names right now. Do we have any public comment? I don't see any call in. And Kim, I do see in the chat, Kim apologizing about the agenda not getting out. Just a reminder, all the CHHS staff has been in flux and we've been transferring who is responsible for what. And a priority, and I'm excited to hear from you, Jen, and a priority at the start of this year, since there has been so many different hands that have been working with the CHHS board and our committees, is for us to meet with those that we're going to be working with going forward so we can get back on the same page for how frequently we do things and when agendas go out and those sorts of things. So Kim, I appreciate you picking this up very, very midstream and doing a great job in a difficult time, and we'll get a little bit more clear about everything that we need to do going forward. So I appreciate that. I don't think, did we get meeting minutes? Okay, so we did not, I did not receive meeting minutes either. So I'd like to table the approval of the December meeting minutes. We'll need to get those to be a part of the record so February, we should have both January meeting minutes and December meeting minutes to approve. And I can talk offline about how we've been doing that in the past. Any opposition to that plan? Okay. So we're going to roll right into it, and we're going to welcome the new CHHS director. Jen, welcome. Thank you so much. We're excited to have you here. You have as much time as you'd like to chat with us, but also we would love to both have the opportunity, if we have questions to ask you, but also to help answer your questions about the traditional role that the board has played and some of the things that we're thinking about going forward, how we can help you. So with that, I would like to introduce Jen and have you introduce yourselves to us and take it away from there.
Great, thank you so much. So I'm Jen Saracides, and I am from Spokane originally. I spent about 10 years working at SNAP. I started as an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer. I worked in the homeless area for quite a while. I ended up being the operations manager of that department. And then I spent the last 8 years working in the private sector. I worked in human resources, purchasing, marketing, and now have kind of come back to work at the city. So I'm really excited to be here. My husband works at Trader Joe's, and I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I like to ski. So yay, snow. I know not everybody feels that way.
Jen, would it be helpful for you, for the board members who are here, to at least introduce ourselves a little bit to you and what we've done and on the board and that sort of thing?
Yes, absolutely. That would be great.
That opportunity.
John,
So I'll let the
I'll
rest
call
of
you
you
right
think
back,
about it,
okay?
and I'll probably call people out just so, since everybody's screen is going to look a little different, so it doesn't get awkward. But Jen, I'm Adrienne Lighthouser. I am the outgoing chair of the CHHS board and the current chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. I am wrapping up my 6th year on the board, which is my second term. We have a letter requesting that I can stay on through the end of the year to help with transitions, especially since there's been so many transitions. So that's hopefully in process to also help with the incoming executive officers. I'm from Spokane, born and raised in Spokane, and I'm a professor of business ethics at Gonzaga University. And so, this is especially housing, but care for the community has long been a passion of mine. It's something that I actually bring into the classroom. In fact, we just finished up our fall semester in December, and the last experience that my students have is they look at the United Way's Alice population and what that means in Spokane, and we spend some time doing some simulations so students can experience what their neighbors in Spokane are experiencing and have the knowledge to think about what that looks like going forward and how they can become business leaders who are concerned about the common good and what that means in a healthy sense for creating and sustaining healthy communities. So that's sort of where my passion is. That's why I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee as well. And this, I'll say that many people, I think, have had this experience on this board or are starting to have this experience on this board, and that is it can be easy to sit back and say, why isn't city doing this, or why isn't this happening? And the opportunity from being on this board has taught me, first of all, what complex issues these are, and second of all, and maybe more importantly, how many dedicated people there are and city staff who are absolutely working their hardest to try to come up with creative and sustainable solutions. And so we're very appreciative of that. And it's really nice to have the opportunity to be able to see that and then take that information back out to the community to share with the community to make sure that we're giving each other a little bit of grace as we work through these really difficult topics.
Great, thank you so much.
I think I'll pass it to Anne as the previous chair.
Hi, Jen.
Hi.
Welcome. I am today going to be the past chair. I am finishing up 6 years in April, and I will be done. I'm also the chair of the RFP Evaluation and RFP Committee. I've been doing that ever since not the chair, but being on the committee since beginning. So for 6 years, we'll continue afterwards if approved to be on the committee. My past is I've done everything you can in social services. Retired from Alt-Q, Aging and Long-Term Care, 7 years ago, and immediately was off for a month and then went to work for Empire. We do a health coaching program, primarily in the rural areas, doing what we can to keep people in their homes. We've worked with the tribal community. Right now we're doing a medication management. Barry will tell you more. She's my boss. And I love what I do. And nice thing is I get to be in Mexico for 3.5 months. I've been doing this. This is my 6th year down here. And I have appreciated learning what I have about the city. I'm now a big defender that the city is working hard, doing what they can with unbelievable circumstances. Homeless, had COVID, had now snow and ice and cold. It's not easy to be solved, but I'm committed. We'll stay involved, at least on the evaluation committee. That's me.
Great. Thanks, Anne. And I'll just round out the rest of the current and soon to be previous executive committee with Jerry. Jerry, could you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jen. My name is Jerry Rathbun. I am also from Spokane, lifelong resident, love this city. Really thrilled to be serving on this board and serving the city. I have been on the board, I believe, became official March of 2020. So coming up here, yeah, I came on with Barry and Bob and a couple others. Coming up here 2 years, which is crazy because it's been the wildest 2 years to take on a board position. But it's been really good. Just learned a lot. This is a great board that we have here. The staff is so great. And again, as Adrienne said, just astounded by the work that the city does. My background is in public health. I work currently at Empire Health Foundation. I've been there for 6 years. I'm a program officer. I get to work with Anne, as she mentioned. My work is really focused on promoting care coordination and equitable access to care coordination as a tool to really increase quality of life and improve health outcomes for community members in our region. That's been primarily with tribal and rural communities. Also manage most of our RFP processes at Empire Health Foundation, and those have been really focused on building community and aligning with federal funding, building capacity in community to align with federal funding that's coming in. I am serving on the RFP committee for this board, and I believe after this meeting, pending votes of this board, I will be the incoming chair of the RFP committee. And I'm outgoing vice chair as of this meeting as well.
Thanks, Jerry. And for the rest, I'm just gonna, since I did the executive committee, I'm gonna just go through as I see folks on my screen. So Councilmember Wilkerson, please.
Hello, hi Jen, welcome. I'm outgoing, incoming council member for District 2. So my term ended, re-elected, so I got 4 more years, and I'm excited to serve and to work with you. So great. And there is work to do.
Thank you. Barry.
My name is Barry Barfield. I came in with Jerry in March of 2020. So, I mean, we know everything about how the committee is the board is supposed to be run. That's when COVID hit. So, anywho, that's my experience is I've been on the board ever since. I think I brought COVID in when I was brought in. So, my background, I've spent a big chunk of my life in high school, various roles in high school education. I was a real estate attorney in Los Angeles, at another little swath for 7 years. I'm on the leadership team of the Spokane Homeless Coalition. I'm on the Affordable Housing Committee of this board. Well, I could tell you a lot more, but I think that's enough. That gives you an idea. I'm glad you're here, and I am in awe of anyone who is able to work and serve in the Community Housing and Human Services Department. It is I mean, it's community-wide. It's like the eyes are on you right now. They are on you in a lot of different ways. So thank you for being to serve.
Could you say that one more time, Barry, about the eyes being on you?
On you. Oh, is that what you wanted?
Thanks so much, Barry. Catherine.
Hi, Jen. It's really nice to have you. We're really excited about your being here. So thank you so much for stepping up. So I'm Catherine Alexander. I'm the liaison from the Community Assembly. So my background here in Spokane, I've been here about 8 years, has been mostly neighborhood work. I've been a representative to the Community Assembly. I did run for city council at one point in time, and my interest there was affordable housing. So I'm pleased to be here, and I'm also on the Housing Action Subcommittee. I've been wrestling with this issue for several years. My background is in organizational development and transformation. So I work with companies and do leadership and ethics and values work, strategy, that kind of thing. But I'm pretty much retired from that, and I'm now doing coaching and working to help people learn how to live regeneratively and what that means. And I have taught everything from second grade through high school, which I truly loved, to mostly college. So that's my background.
Thanks so much, Catherine. And of the board members able to attend today, last but certainly not least, Gordon, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, Jen. I can't see my face. So I don't know if anybody can see me. Okay. Basically, a few years ago, I work for the VA Medical Center, Healthcare for Homeless Veterans, and I'm a Vietnam era Navy veteran. I got out of the Navy in 1975, and between then and now, there's a lot of stories in there, and somehow I ended up falling off a roof after a lot of different occupations. But I went back to school at age 50 and was attending school at Whitworth when I ended up homeless, and I got introduced to the homeless services of the VA Medical Center, and I moved in and took advantage of temporary bridge housing, and eventually I was one of the first graduates of the HUD-VAST program, Housing and Urban Development and VA Supportive Housing. And I moved on from there as I got different. I worked for Volunteers of America for a while in work release program houses, and those folded up. And I've done other things in the community. Oh, leading up to while I was going to what am I going to say? I did a couple practicums in the community, worked for the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho as a substance abuse counselor, and that's what I was going to do. I tried that grant money ran out, and I tried a couple things in the community, but I decided to go back to school, got a bachelor's degree in social services, and ended up once I graduated, I got a job with the VA homeless program, and I was a housing person for a couple of years, but then moved in as an employment coordinator. So that's what I've been doing the bulk of my time. I've been with the VA about 11 years, and the last 6 years I've been an employment coordinator. But I also connect with resources in this veteran community. So I'm kind of a foot soldier with the homeless vets, and working with our homeless program in the VA. I'm a liaison between them and all resources in order housing and employment related resources I work on. How I ended up on this board, my supervisor was just overwhelmed and busy and asked me if I was interested in being on the board. They said that a few years ago that there was going to be a shift toward workforce development, and about halfway through, just before COVID hit, we were almost there. We formed a committee, and there, most of the people that were assigned to that committee aren't on the board now. They're all gone. And so, anyway, like I said, COVID hit, and we never really did get off the ground with the workforce development part. So I was asked if I want to stay on the board, and I do, anticipating that eventually we'll work on some kind of a workforce development committee. But until then, I've been trying to go to school and learn all I can about affordable housing, and any input I can give toward, we talk about all these affordable housing units going up where they need case management, and our transitional housing and HUD-VAST case management services is a pretty good model for a lot of that stuff. So I can give some advice here and there, and input anyway. So I'm happy to be here. I look forward to meeting you maybe tomorrow at the Homeless Coalition meeting.
Thanks so much, Gordon. Jen, do you have any questions for us or anything you'd like to share with us? I think this is technically your third day that you've been on the job. So I know this is very early, but is there anything we can share?
At this point, I don't have any questions. I'm sure I will develop quite a few as we go along. But just thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all of the work that you do for our community.
Thanks, Jen. I do, just want to, while we have you here for just a moment, I just want to share a little bit the history of how this board was formed and why it was formed. And certainly we've got, we have the ordinance and we have our bylaws, and then we've got a full binder of information that talks about which funding sources that we primarily look at between the board and between the two current committees, which is the RFP committee and the Affordable Housing Committee. And essentially part of what happened was, I think it was probably about 4 or 5 years before Ann and I started, and we're the ones who have been on this the longest. And there had been some attempts to put out some RFPs and for some both services, but also for things like capital improvements and things of that nature. But at that time, those were done in different parts of the department and with different citizen input on evaluating those. And what they found at that time, that the problem they were trying to solve in creating this board was there would be things like a building, the capital improvements would get approved, but the services that were supposed to get in there wouldn't get approved. And really both of those things needed to happen at the same time. And so part of the goal of the CHHS board, which at that time included the continuum of care, what the continuum of care oversees. Part of the goal of that was to create one body of community members, and we try to be representative community members. We have some things listed out in the bylaws as to both specific places and positions that we hope to have filled by people representing different parts of the community. But the goal was that body would then have the opportunity to sort of look at the whole picture when some of these funding opportunities come through. And also become more expert in being a part of the funding cycle process, so that history got built up, so that people had expertise as we were looking at these other projects. Right as Ann and I came on was when HUD shifted the rules for the funding that the continuum of care oversees. And so we came on right as that portion of what this board did was being moved into the separate continuum of care board that was no longer permitted to be under the city. And so that's sort of where that shift took place. The goal of both of these committees, the board and committee, however, is that we're in communication with each other, so that there is still an overall sense of what's going on for folks experiencing homelessness and our low income community members, so that we have a broader sense as we're making some of these decisions. And we're a unique board for the city in that we are a board that is actually responsible for our own recruiting and appointing of members, because though we serve as offering our suggestions and recommendations to City Council and the administration, we're really meant to serve the community. And so unlike many of the other boards where the appointments might come from the administration, we actually identify the needs that we have in the openings on our board and do the interview process. Now, of course, that has to then be approved by the administration, and then it moves to City Council, who approves that membership. So there is certainly a voice and space for the administration and City Council. But the goal and part of what that's meant to preserve is this understanding that we are really meant to be as representative of the community as possible. And we serve the function, the HUD requirement of that voice at looking at both some of the plans like the consolidated plans and those sorts of things, and also certain funding such as the home funds, some CDBG, some ESG funds. So that's sort of a really, really quick summary of how we came to be and how we're sort of meant to fit in with the overall structure in place in the city and the CHHS department. And we typically meet monthly. The board meets monthly and the executive committee meets monthly. There are standing meetings. I don't know if there's currently a standing meeting for the RFP committee, but there is a standing meeting for the Affordable Housing Committee. That said, the Affordable Housing Committee only meets if we have something to discuss that we then are going to send on to the CHHS board meeting, but we've got that set time. We generally need almost all of our CHHS board meetings. Often, if there's nothing that we're going to do, we might cancel, but our plan is to have them scheduled monthly during the year, and we usually use most of those, if not all of those. And then the other part of our board schedule that will be important to be thinking about and how it fits in and planning the next calendar year is that we typically do one retreat a year. That's an all afternoon retreat with the board, and that's usually also with the full CHHS staff, at least the staff that's directly connected with particularly the fundings. The funding that we have that we overlook that we oversee. And so I think we're aiming for that in September, but I just want to sort of put a bug that is sort of a unique change in our regular schedule that we'll be looking forward to. Did I miss anything in my very, very fast summary? Okay. Any other questions, either from you, Jen, or questions or comments from board members?
Nothing from me, thank you. Thank you for the overview and background.
And I will say this is, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to ask Jen, what does she feel is her first priority coming into this position?
Thank you for the great question. I would say my first priority is really just wrapping my arms around all the good work that's already happening in the department, and kind of just getting the lay of the land. I've been doing that for the last 3 days, and I'm sure I have several more days, if not weeks ahead of me in that aspect as well. There's obviously some, and Eric, I know it has an update plan, but there's obviously some kind of immediate needs that are going on out in the community, and I'm definitely part of that discussion. I am letting Eric lead those because he's been involved in them throughout the entire process, and I'm kind of coming in at the end. But definitely, playing a part in that. I think the goal really is to get out of reaction mode and start kind of trying to plan a little bit more in advance what we want to achieve and how we want to achieve those goals. And so to do that, I just feel like I need a little bit more information and background about what we're doing now. What are some of the challenges? How do we fit and how do we want to move forward? So that's sort of what I'm doing right now.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, I have a question. I know many of the people who have evolved through your position over the years, and I've heard them speak about how stressful and difficult this position is. Like I said, the eyes of the community, homeless and low-income stuff, and especially now housing stuff, important and controversial. Why the heck do you want this job? Tell me, why do you want to step into this?
Barry, don't scare her away. We need her.
Stop, Barry.
No, thank you, Barry.
I'm hoping she'll be in it for the long haul, but she's got to know what she's getting into.
So I will tell you, my goal is minimum. I want like the next 10 years of whatever it is that I'm doing. And I took this job with that understanding that, when you look back at kind of my work history, I've worked at both of the main places that I've worked for 8 to 10 years. I like that long-term view. That's something that's really important to me. I saw this position. I will say, to be honest, the reason I began looking for a new position, I really enjoyed my other job, but I did have to travel quite a bit for work. And after a break during COVID, I kind of started to reevaluate, do I want to be gone from my family? And is there an opportunity to do something that's a little bit closer to home where my skills can be utilized? And I saw this position and I saw it amidst all of the information that was coming out about kind of what was going on in the community and in the department. And I just was intrigued. And to be honest, I have always been somebody that likes to tackle challenges. Coming into a well-oiled machine doesn't excite me. I like to be part of the process of getting the machine oiled and working the way it needs to be. So I recognize there's going to be a lot of challenges, and definitely there's a lot of pressure on the department, and there's a lot of work to do. And I think personally, for me, I will try to manage through that with a lot of self-care. You know, take a lunch. One of the reasons that I took the time to do this job is because I wanted to spend time with my family, and that's a goal for me. Like, I want to go home at night. I want to spend time with my family, and that's something that recharges me and gives me the opportunity to come into work the next day and give it my all while I'm there. But having some of those boundaries, I think, is really important, even though I'm sure those boundaries will be tested quite a bit, you know, throughout a variety of processes. But I'm hopeful that that we'll get kind of some things ironed out, and as we have staff kind of increase their longevity of the time in the department. We obviously have some long-term staff that are excellent, and they've hung in through the long term. But to kind of get everybody into more of that comfortable place, and then we can kind of move along in a more steady rate, I think will be really great, and I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you so much for both of those answers, Jen, and thanks, Barry and Councilman Wilkerson, for asking those. And I do just want to let you know, Jen, as far as some resources, of course, certainly all of us that are on the board, but also when we look at our affordable housing and RFP committee membership, those are some of the people that were founders of this board. So where in some spaces, George, I see you there, but in some spaces we're lacking some seniority in the staff of the department. There is some of that expertise through our board and our committees that please take advantage of. Please feel free to ask questions, because you know, even of course, there are things you're going to want to shift and change. It's helpful to know why they landed the way that they did currently in making those decisions about what makes sense going forward. So we're happy to help in any way. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, and we'll come back to the director's report in a few minutes. We have a few discussion and action items. I think that the first couple are going to, my guess is, go a little bit quickly. So we'll work through those first. So for those of you who maybe didn't see my email today, we are looking at shifting to the new executive officers and voting on that slate of officers today, which would be effective when we adjourn the meeting. So it would be effective immediately. And I did send out the names earlier, but in case you didn't see that email, I want to just share who the slate is that the executive committee is suggesting, and then just open it up if there are any other board members who would like to suggest that they would like to nominate themselves to be in those roles. And I do have permission, even though Bob is not here, that he is one of the people who was interested in a leadership role. So I want to be clear with that. So the slate that we propose going forward would be Barry Barfield as chair, and our two co-vice chairs would be Bob Hutchinson and Catherine Alexander. So the three of them, along with me as former chair, before we get to the committee chairs, would make the basic executive committee. And so what we're looking for is either
don't forget Jerry. Jerry,
we haven't voted on that part yet,
Oh,
Dan. That's why I said the smaller group first. So and then just a reminder for the way that the executive committee works is that it is those three officers, and ideally these are all different people. It's not currently the case right now, but ideally it's all different people. That it would be those three officers plus the former chair, plus the chair of each of the two committees, the Affordable Housing Committee and the RFP Committee. So as Ann was alluding to, when we get to the next step and see about having Jerry as chair of the Affordable, or excuse me, of the RFP Committee, that would keep her on the executive committee while she's chair. currently I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee. So currently I would be serving sort of double duty in that role, with a look to shift that going forward. But nonetheless, that's where we're at right now. So I would be open to entertain either a motion for the slate as is, a discussion about the various positions, or if anybody would like to self-nominate for one of the roles and wants to talk about that. And ideally, any motion would need to come from somebody who isn't amongst those three that we would be voting on.
I will move to nominate or elect the members as proposed. And then after a second, we can have a discussion.
This
And
is
I
elect.
I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion that was put forward and seconded is to elect the slate as stated, with Barry as chair and Bob and Catherine as co-vice chairs. And just a reminder, hopefully this isn't news to you, Barry. Hopefully you remembered this, but just as a reminder, typically the chair position is a 2-year position, and the vice chairs are a 1-year position. And that's so we're training people and getting folks who would then be able to step from the vice chair into the chair position. So we'd be electing Barry for 2 years and then the 2 co-vice chairs for 1 year. Any discussion?
Would have waited till after the election to notify Barry.
Yeah.
And then he has to buy us all dinner, right? Isn't that the other?
Yep.
All right, I'm not hearing any discussion, so we do have the motion and the second. So all those in favor of electing these executive officers, please raise your hand or say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for stepping up into these positions. I'm looking forward to working a little bit more closely with all of you. And I will just say that the executive committee space is a space where you end up learning a lot more, I think, about the holistic understanding of what the department does. That said, this is also a pretty exciting time with staffing starting to get solidified so that we can be more forward thinking, as Jen was talking about. So this is a great time for this transition and to make this board work going forward. The second thing that I wanted that we're going to talk about, congratulations. And I don't know if we clapped enough. Congratulations. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. The second thing that I wanted that we wanted to look at is the committee members. And does somebody have that second sheet of the agenda, since I'm unable to share, who could share what it says for our standing committee information? Because there are some things that are not correct about that. And I just want to get that accurate, and then we can talk about Jerry and the position. So this is just the second page of the agenda, if anybody can share that, since I am unable to. Thanks, Kim. Okay. A small change that's not a super important change, but will be helpful for all the new staff, is that the Affordable Housing Committee actually meets at the second Tuesday from 10:30 to 12. George, do you remember what that time is exactly? I'll look at my calendar. I know it's not 11:30 to 1.
I think there have been some confusions about that, so that's something that probably needs to be solidified, because I think Andy at the last meeting, he had mentioned that he thought it was 11:30 to 1. So
yeah, we had switched it. We had changed it for me because I had class. So it's been switched for the last year to 10:30 to noon, but I see that it hadn't gotten updated on the standing committee information. So
what should I put on my calendar for the appropriate time?
10:30 to noon.
Okay.
And we should get that updated on the back of this agenda, and that doesn't take a vote. That's just been what it's been for the last year. But I think it got lost when Becky's invites went away, and then figuring out new invites. And then, Anne, looking at the evaluation and review committee, is there anybody on there who shouldn't be or anyone who's missing?
No, although Sarah's just moved positions, so I don't know where she's gone to. I would say leave her there until we hear from her. But
Yeah, and Sarah still has really good insight. I think she's left Providence, right? But I think
Yeah.
I just saw something.
yeah, we just saw that, so
Yeah.
and nobody seemed to know where she was. So we could. My suggestion is that you give her like 30 to 60 days, and then
Sure.
you can
Yeah.
remove her.
And yeah, and we can that committee can have those conversations. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing anybody right from the start. And then the executive committee actually meets the third Wednesday of each month, 4 to 5:30. So that should also be changed because we had it so that it started at the same time as the board meeting. So just some just a couple of little things that I think got lost along the way on these agendas. And I went back and past agendas, and it's been the wrong times for this whole year. So I'm sorry that I just now noticed it. So, but we'll at least get the time set. Those are subject to change, of course, with changing of committees. But for right now, that's when those standing meetings are. And evaluation and review doesn't have a standing meeting.
We had talked about meeting quarterly, so that Mary may decide to change that, and she would work probably with George or Kelsey.
Right, and that was the original plan with the reason the evaluation got added to the review committee. Part of it was with the 5-year RFP. The idea was that that committee wouldn't be doing the annual RFPs that they were doing in the past, but would then instead meet quarterly to do evaluations of the ongoing programs and to participate in those kinds of evaluations. So that was the spirit with which that addition to that that committee was that it was named a little bit differently, and hopefully as things stabilize, we'll be able to move in that direction.
Then COVID hit.
And so that said, we wanted to, of course, and we can do at the beginning at the next meeting, see if there's anybody who would like to serve on these other committees, and if so, they can bring their names forward, and we typically vote if there's any substantial change of the committees, do that at a board meeting. So perhaps the February board meeting, I will leave that up to Barry if that's when he would like to do that. But that said, if you're interested either in participating on one of those committees or changing the committee that you're on, this next month might be a good time to do that, or maybe the next 2 months would be a good time to do that. And we can revisit these committees, and we like to about once a year vote on the slate of committees, just the membership that's on it. That could also give Sarah a chance to see if she wants to continue, or if she thinks someone else might fill that role, if that's a specific role. That said, although there is no action item, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Adrienne, this is Jerry really quick. Yep. The other thing I just want to point out with the evaluation RFP committee is after her term ends with the board, I will be the only board member serving on the RFP committee. So that's just a heads up to our board, and it'd be good to have, 1 or 2 other people on there.
Yes. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah. That is an important thing to have, and the goal is it's not possible with just the 2 committees for every single board member to serve on the board and on one of the committees without us reaching quorum in those committees. But we have folks who serve other roles. For example, Councilmember Wilkerson is bringing the perspective of City Council, and so is serving the double duty that way. So if you're not on a committee, executive committee could count as your committee, but if you have a passion or an interest in one of these other committees, you also, so long as we don't reach quorum and we don't ever get to a tipping point where too few people are doing the work, you can serve on more than one committee. So please keep that in mind if you would like to nominate yourself for one of the committees or switch the committee that you're on. And I think that would be a discussion. Barry, would you just like to have them email you if they'd like to make those changes? I don't know.
Yes, I would like that, and probably I'm making notes here. I probably will, before the February meeting, send out an email sort of addressing the things that you are mentioning right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Barry. But with that, and it's not an action item, but if the board so chooses, we can make this an action item with Anne in Mexico and getting ready to shift off the board in April. We did want to make sure we had secured a very clear chair of the committee. And as a reminder, our committees, the chair position has to be a sitting board member. And so I think that the RFP and Evaluation Committee was interested in shifting that chair position that Anne did such a great job with over the last couple of years, was interested in shifting that to Jerry. And if we would like to clean up that before the February board meeting, and somebody would like to move to approve Jerry as the chair of the Evaluation and Review Committee, they may do so.
I so move. Or I second, either one.
Okay, well, then since you said both, we'll say Anne can move and Barry will second. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, motion passes. Jerry, thank you so much for continuing to serve on the RFP committee and in the chair position, which also means continuing to serve on the executive committee. So thank you so much for the time that you've given this board and expertise that you've given this board and the best questions. I think you asked some of the best questions. So thanks so much. And then the last little bit of the thing that we do annually that you might not have known what it meant was the discussion item 3, which says executive committee approvals when necessary. What that means is occasionally we were able to, with this emergency rental assistance, the RFP committee was able to get together before our board meeting. But occasionally we have some sort of emergency funding that comes through that has to be signed off by the CHHS board before a full meeting. And so what we typically do annually is we ask the board to give permission to the executive committee to make that recommendation in those rare emergency situations, so that city council and the administration can go about the work with that funding. And then the executive committee comes back to the full board to get that full board approval in the first meeting following that approval process. So that's what that emergency executive committee approval is about. It's rare. It's often happened in like when the January meeting fell like right on New Year's Day or something like that. And so we weren't going to have a January meeting. So it's more often fallen when there's been a reason to cancel the board meeting or something of that nature has happened. But we need the board approval to be able to do that in those unusual circumstances. So if I could get a motion for the executive committee approval.
So move, Barry.
Thanks, Barry. Can I get a second?
Second, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry. Any more discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor say aye or raise your hand, please.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion passes. So now we are on to the emergency rental assistance. And I again want to thank the CHHS department and the evaluation and committee for being able to pull this together so quickly to be able to bring this to the board. So really, I know this is a tough time to get everyone together. Great work, both department staff and to this committee. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm going to introduce Kelsey. Kelsey took over for Margaret, who went on to another, we don't know if it's a better job, but she went into a different job, left us. And Kelsey luckily had been working with Margaret very closely, so she was able to put this together. The committee did meet yesterday. We had a really good discussion. I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey to show you some of the numbers and to see why we made the decision or the can make a decision. Why we're making a recommendation to the board for your approval to for the city council. So Kelsey, you want to share with us some of those numbers?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Kelsey Martin, as Ann said, and I've been with the rental assistance program in the whole time. So, you know, I've been working with Margaret along this whole way. So this wasn't a new thing for me to step into at the very end. So this data and these numbers I've been working with very closely. So again, just to rest assured that I wasn't coming into this at the very end with new eyes. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And this was included in the agenda, but I'm not sure if everyone had a chance to take a look at it yet.
I don't think it was sent out to people.
Okay. Can everyone see that? Okay.
This is the one we discussed yesterday.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is a new one. All right.
Oh no, excuse me, this is the one we discussed yesterday, but I did update the number with Family Promise's correct amount that has gone out to date. There was a little bit of inaccuracies in their TRAP1 data. So this is what is current as of today. So Anne, would you like to talk about this, or would you like me to give an explanation?
Would you show, maybe it's the summary that I'm missing?
Sure, down here.
What I wanted to show is what's been spent, numbers. I'm sorry, I've never seen this sheet before, and maybe I wasn't looking. That's the one I want.
Oh.
I think before, Kelsey, it was showing a detail tab versus the summary.
Right.
Okay.
Which is great. But this one, I think if you can take a look at this, Kelsey, why don't you tell us what we're seeing, and then Jerry and I can make comments.
Okay. So as you can see, this top portion here are all the various tranches that the city has received in fundings thus far. Down below here is this fourth round, the ERA2. So far the city has received ERA1, TRAP1, and TRAP2. And Live Stories has been a recipient of all three tranches. Family Promise has been a recipient of the first two tranches, and the Carl Maxey Center was a recipient of the first tranche. And so far, Live Stories has fully exhausted, you can see, both their first and second round of funding. Family Promise has also exhausted their first round, and Carl Maxey has exhausted. All of the ERA funds are completely exhausted. TRAP1 from Live Stories is exhausted, and they just began administering their TRAP2 funds beginning of the year. They made this $2 million request, I believe it was on Monday, from me. Family Promise is about halfway through their TRAP allotment for direct services. They are working, they've been ramping up a program, and so you can see here that their average monthly disbursement here on the bottom is considerably higher for their second round of funding. So it's expected that this TRAP fund will be exhausted in Family Promise by likely mid-February. And then Carl Maxey exhausted their funds at the end of October for ERA1. So the city totals, you can see here, you know, the city has gotten out 14.6 million really as of today. That includes this TRAP2 2 million that is really in process. So 12.6 million if you take away that TRAP2 that is just recently been processed, but serving, you know, 2,357 households.
So before you go on, as a reminder, at the last board meeting, you all voted on the TRAP2 monies going strictly to Live Stories. Even though Family Promise had requested some, we gave all to Live Stories with the recommendation that Family Promise join in with Live Stories. So you know why the funds are just Live Stories, or as a reminder of what decision we made last meeting.
And was Carl Maxey also working with Live Stories, or
Yeah.
they were not? Yeah, okay, I thought they were. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, Carl Maxey elected to kind of come in as a partner, sub-recipient of Life Stories for the TREP 1 and TREP 2 funds.
Okay.
And so looking ahead to ERA 2, down here, this is our fourth and final tranche that the city has received to date. The total award is 5.297. After city administration is taken out, it was 5.165. And we received 3 eligible applicants. And really, Anne and the committee, the main review was looking at current applications in each partner's lines currently. You know, the Live Stories has 1,600 applications in their queue currently. Family Promise has 142 and Carl Maxey has 50. And so looking at what would funding those applications now look like and what those funds needed would be. And that's what these bottom numbers here are. This 3.75 and 380 to Carl Maxey. And you can see the requests that they made in their proposals below that.
So one of the things that we discussed is if we just fund them so that they can get the people that are in the queue right now funded, it would pretty much take all the money. Family Promise can use the funds that they still have and take care of the people in their queue. Live Stories desperately needs more money. And Carl Maxey, the 50 you see there are right now also part of Live Stories. If we give them money separately, their sense was they could get them funded quicker and get them into the landlord's hands quicker. So, Terry, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, a few things that I'd add. Yep, as both Kelsey and Ann said, we were considering how much money or how many people they have in the queue, how much money they need, and then trying to make sure that they have funding beyond that, because we know that Live Stories, Carl Maxey have demonstrated proficiency at being able to find people and get them processed. Family Promise has money remaining to cover the people that they have in the queue and probably more beyond that. I know, baby. Sorry, I've got a 3-year-old and he's talking to me. And both Live Stories and Carl Maxey have demonstrated the ability to process this money and get people served and do that fairly quickly, whereas Family Promise has taken longer to do that with the money that they currently have. So we just saw that there wasn't a need for Family Promise to get this funding, considering they still have that funding there. With Carl Maxey Center, they have a really strong reputation for being trusted in community and doing really good work. And that's, again, demonstrated through their data. Live Stories has been really proficient at building partnerships with those community-based organizations like Carl Maxey Center and others to really get to community and get these funds where they need to go. One of the questions that came up was, are they compensating those community-based organizations for doing the work? And Kelsey was able to provide us some good information that they are doing that. They've got good contracts. And then I've personally had a conversation with Latinas in Spokane who just briefly reported a really good experience working with Live Stories. So all of this together informed our recommendation to fund Carl Maxey Center's request in full and then put the rest of those funds toward Live Stories.
So I have a question for clarification. If Carl Maxey is working with Live Stories, is the 50 people that Carl Maxey have included in the 1644 that Live Story is reporting, or is that additional? How does that work?
It's part of.
Yeah, they are included in that. You can see here, this is as of January 1st. I actually spoke with Live Stories earlier today to get an update to this number. And you can see their average applications that they receive is 26. And so, yes, those 50 applications that are at Carl Maxey are in Live Stories queue currently. That being said, Live Stories queue is now over 100 higher than is listed here because of the applications that they've received just since the first of when they reported this data to me. So, you know, we're taking 50 away from Live Stories, but we're adding 26 every day.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to make sure that I understand as I look at the table. So the idea was, or the recommendation from the committee was to not add additional funds to Family Promise, but they still have funds that could serve these folks that are in the queue. And then is it the 1 million amount or the $380,000 amount for Carl Maxey Center that would be funded in full, with the rest, the recommendation being the rest then goes to Live Stories?
Yeah, it's the 1 million mark.
So it's the proposal amount.
Yep,
Okay.
their requested amount. Yeah, and that's based also on us having the confidence that they'll spend that out, and they've got that reputation and trust in community. And also it's a good way for a smaller organization to build the capacity to manage these funds. And that's something that we as a committee and as a board have discussed in length, and really want to make sure we're doing that with our community partners.
It's always
So
been
then
a
the
really
rest, it would be about, then I just want to make sure that I have the numbers because we don't have the numbers in front of us. So it would be the 1,092,000 for Carl Maxey Center, and that would be about 4 million then. Is that right? If I'm remembering from
Yeah,
the
4.072
for Live Stories. Okay, sorry, Anne, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to get the numbers.
Yeah, no, the only other thing I wanted to add is one of the things that the committee looked at is the partnership and the relationships. Carl Maxey has quite a few that they've been working with in the community. Live Stories, the same. Family Promise, we didn't see any, even though we've told them we want partnership. So that was another reason for us to approve Live Stories and Carl Maxey.
I'm curious. I'm curious what Family Promise reports back as to why they haven't made those relationships, given this is not, they've been, I feel like that was suggested right from the beginning, and then that was the reason for not doing that second round of funding with them. And I'm just curious if staff or anybody has heard like why that's not landing on them in such a way to change it, or why they feel like they're serving plenty without needing to build those relationships, which I'm guessing is what they would say.
I don't know why, and they have a limit to families only. Both Carl Maxey and Life Stories doesn't have that limit. They had, and Kelsey, you may be able to pull this up quickly. I was impressed with the number of 18 to 24-year-olds that they were able to serve. Keep them in housing. So Life Stories in Carl Maxey, it's both families and single people. Carl Maxey is getting funds, we learned, through Empire Health Foundation that will also help with mortgage assistance. So there's good stuff going.
Better Health Together, not Empire Health Foundation.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Together.
I'm sorry. You're right. Sorry, Jerry. Yeah. Totally two different organizations. Please forgive that. I've just been fired. Yeah, Better Health Together, the application that the funding that we gave a few months ago, and we'll get more from George one of these days. So, yeah. Let's see.
Thank you all. So, thank you for the report. And I have to also say thank you for the good report on the Carl Maxey Center. I will be recusing myself as I am the board chair. So nothing like having these great accolades, but without me having to say anything, that our work speaks for itself. But I did want to put that on the record. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just like to add, Kelsey developed this report, I said, would you give us numbers? And so she developed this report, and I really appreciate the work she did in putting this together so we could look at it. We looked at the numbers, then we looked at the applications, we discussed it, we have scoring. Barry, as chair, if you would like to see what the scoring was so that you know, because we can always have the unsuccessful applicants request to meet with us, which is fine. We've done that in the past, and Barry, you would probably be involved with that. So
yeah, and I just want to echo that Kelsey did such great work. Made our jobs as committee members easy, put together just the right information to help make the decision, had answers to our questions. For someone, I know that Kelsey, you didn't come in right at the end, you've been doing this all along, and it shows, and just so much appreciation for everything that you do in your position.
Yeah, we tried to stymie her and we couldn't. It would come, oh, here's the answer. So no, we have a tough RFP committee. I got to tell you, we can get in there. George will testify to that. We'll go wait. So yeah, so we have that. So
Kelsey, could I get this? Kelsey, could I get, or Anne, unless you have the specific numbers, but I would like the specific numbers in the motion. So if we could get the specific numbers and then we can have the motion.
Yep. Do you want them in the chat, or do you want me to just tell you?
If you just tell me, so it can be, so then whoever says it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Carl Maxey Center would be 1,092,500. And Live Stories is 4,072,919.
Okay, so do we have a motion to fund for the emergency rental assistance, the Carl Maxey Center, 1,092,500, and Live Stories, 4,072,919.
Also,
we have a motion for that.
Catherine.
Thanks,
Barry,
Catherine.
so move, or second.
Thank you, Barry. Any more discussion or questions? And we have of note, we have the one recusal, so make sure that we get that on the record. All those in favor of forwarding this recommendation from our RFP committee?
Aye.
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 Any opposed?
Oh, Kathleen's there.
Any abstain? All right, the motion passes. That's the recommendation that we will move forward. Thank you all again for that really hard work that was pulled together incredibly quickly. So thank you so much. And Kathleen, hi, I'm glad that you're able to join us. Just in time, I think, for the director's report. That's all right. That's all right. Beginning of the year, we're all still figuring out our schedules. I know mine's kind of wonky right now. So just in time for the director's report. So I will turn it over to Eric and Jen.
Again, good afternoon all, and just as one kind of follow-up comment, on the rent assistance piece, because I think it's important, to make sure that we kind of call this out, because this is, both I think been a very, very good success in terms of what we've been able to kind of generate for the community, as well as, in some ways we will be a little bit of a victim of our success in terms of the applications that are represented out there, like through Live Stories as an example, will quickly exhaust that last round of funding, potentially, to the point where within the next week or two, what we're going to be evolving a discussion with Live Stories is the fact that they might have to kind of post on their site that, hey, you can still submit an application, but your funding will not be guaranteed. And then as we look to see whatever other funding sources that might be available or otherwise, that may or may not come, then we can stand it down further from there, just based on what we need to do. But one of the things that's unique about this, as we did a discussion on this today, is that we're going to be one of the first jurisdictions or regions that exhausts that funds. So it's a good news, bad news things. In some way, we're going to start having to maybe tell people no when other jurisdictions are still able to accept applications. And so that's just something that, from a communication standpoint, as well as an understanding, in our community, that we're going to have to develop, that it's actually for a good reason. The thing that it might set us up for is, like most grant things, if other jurisdictions underspend or don't fully utilize, there may be a recapture point And those of us that potentially maybe have exhausted, faster, that might be give us an additional line on doing it. But what I wanted to make sure that you understood, from the board perspective is that this program is not ongoing, right? And so as we complete this funding potentially within the next 30 days, then ultimately, we will have the environment we have, and where some of that money obviously will fund some future months. Without additional funding sources, this program will end. And so, I just want to make sure that we're mindful of that, because we might have to give that bad news out sooner than other jurisdictions are, simply because we've been able to, kind of get through and get the money out there. So I'll stop there since there's many questions before I go on.
Catherine, do I see your hand raised?
Jerry was before me.
Oh, okay. Jerry, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. Yeah, no, Eric, that's a really good point around how, as a jurisdiction, we've been able to exhaust these funds sooner than others. And what I would love to know, and I say this knowing that you guys all have plenty on your plate, but I would love to know, see an analysis of that. Is that I imagine it's both based on the effectiveness of the city, city employees, our community partners, but I also imagine that it has something to do with the need. So I'd love to know, just kind of see an analysis of why that was compared to other jurisdictions, and see how that might inform both how the city gets funds out moving forward and how we continue to have strong partnerships with those community-based organizations, and also if that can inform, future funding that we get, or the city gets.
Yes, so we'll take that on board. I think just anecdotally, Spokane, when you just look at the economics and the census information, we have a larger low income community than a lot do have. Just statistically speaking. So I think that's probably one of the reasons. I would not pretend that, that it's the main reason or the only reasons, but, as best we can, I'll work with Kelsey and see what else we can look at in terms of some of those underlying root causes. Yeah. And then, Catherine, and then I know Barry had his hand up too.
So yeah, I would kind of like to segue on Jerry before I get into my thing too. It would be really nice to know what the city did well that got those funds out and used. I think that would be really useful. And my question is there other funding on the horizon, or are we just hopeful, or is there really something that we're really looking at that might be coming in the future?
Yes. So I'll say at first hopeful. But I think that with the extension of different variants, right, and the fact that we're not out of the woods yet in terms of the pandemic, and that I think this has been one of the more successful federal and state level programs that have been run in terms of keeping people housed, and I think it's one of these unique things that helps both that person stay in their home as well as the landlord in terms of being able to keep the property maintained and pay their mortgage and everything else. So I think in some ways it has had that dual benefit, and so I would like to think that they will reinforce success, but I think we also know that from the government perspective, as they've flowed down, whether it be ARP funds or otherwise, that's not an inexhaustible supply. So I think the most likely is that we will get some recapture or potentially qualify for some recapture, from other jurisdictions. But the other thing that we are working on, and again, we talked about today, so we're not prepared with it yet, is just giving kind of like, okay, what's the monthly impact, so that we can give back to all of you and our decision makers, in the city. Okay, here's, if it's like $1 million, burn rate, so to speak, in terms of what this takes to fuel, per the 4,000 households helped or otherwise, giving some barometer on that, so that as we look at other funding sources or other availability or other grants, what does that mean and what does it take? So I think once we have that information, we'll make sure we share it. And I think that the city, it's interesting because I think this is, I'm not trying to make this about any of the providers, whether it be, Carl Maxey Center or Life Stories or Family Promise, but, I think that we did it a little bit, different in terms of how we did the tranches. And I think in some ways that ended up being a little bit more successful than ones that would just, mix all the money together and do it more communally. Whether that actually has helped, been a large factor or a small factor, that might be part of it too. And Kelsey, I don't know if you have any other, direct comments that might be of value.
Yeah, I think, Catherine, to your point about future funds, I mean, I think that the other hope is, that Commerce is actively working on a permanent state rental assistance funding. The legislation has passed, and the project and the program is actively being created. I'm actually on the steering committee for that as a city representative. So it's working. It's part of it is there, but it's definitely, like Eric was talking about, there may be a bridge that is needed between when our funds exhaust and when the state program is actually active, because it's likely not going to be in the next 30 days or 60 days.
Can I chime in now? I'm not exactly a PR and political pressure expert, but I would suggest, or at least I'll offer, when we project that those funds are going to be exhausted, that we put out a public statement, and we got good people at the city to make up kind of public statements that, success, good news, we're getting the money out. Bad news is we're running out. And put in that statement something like, we have sent a letter, I don't know, ask if Nadine wants to do this or someone. We have sent a letter to Lisa Brown and to Kathy McMorris Rogers and to whoever saying, thank you for your great work on the state and federal level, but we need more. I don't know, that might build some pressure, grassroots to go up to those folks to help us out.
Yeah, and thanks, Barry. And honestly, I think in some degree is that, that is, as my understanding is, that's certainly an appropriate role of this board is to make that, kind of recommendation. And so, and we're happy to carry that forward. So, I will defer to those of you that have worked on this board longer than I have, in terms of how that should be constituted as the recommendation up. And I'm certainly happy to help carry that water.
Okay, well, if that's our role, then Adrienne and Ann, anybody else who's been around for a while, I would like to talk to you about if that's a worthwhile thing to do and how to do it. Yeah, and one of the reasons why we have obviously the council members, on the board as well, right? So they can kind of directly hear it and help, kind of carry that message back as well.
So
yeah, I think that's a piece that's really important that we've, it's been a little bit trickier with not being in person, I think, in an interesting way, but that role that we have in assisting with suggestions for communication, or where we're in the community not hearing things. So Barry, so your point that request serves two roles. It puts the pressure out there, but it also provides transparency and important communication to the community that the administration and the council are working hard for these funds, and we've been successful. And so that is exactly something that's important for it to be at least a topic of conversation, if not something that becomes a more formal motion down the road, if we feel that's necessary.
Yeah, and please correct me, anyone that knows better than I do, but again, from my level and the staff that are here, inclusive of Jen, we're kind of your agents, and we might give you recommendations or options or actually have an opinion about something, but but we're also trying to find that right line of, we're not trying to tell you what to do or and we're certainly not an approval authority for it, right? So I think that at the end of the day, I love the healthy dialogue, but I do want to make sure that we respect your role in this, in terms of again, if I could say the sky is blue and you could say no, it's dark and cloudy, and if that's the recommendation you want to make to the mayor and the council, that's the recommendation you can write up. It's still my job to carry it, even if I've given you a different opinion or otherwise. And so, I think that I mean, we've got great alignment and we've got great crosstalk. So I appreciate that role in difference. But, so I think whether it's a motion or however you want to do it, that would be the normal way you do it. You do that, and then Kim and whomever else helps write it up, and then we make sure. I would make sure it gets to the administration, as well as the council, and certainly then Betsy would make sure that the council has it and her views as well. Okay, so any other questions before I move on to the director's report? Okay, so thank you all, and I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can, and like all things, open for questions as we go through it. So I'm just going to kind of hit off on what I see as kind of the major priorities. Now, most of my time, as I think you all know, has really been kind of committed to the CHHS piece. In where I'm, I typically the NHHS director, right, which also has offices of neighborhood services and a couple other areas. The reality of it is this has been where the primary work and certainly leadership gap has been. And so as Jen comes on board, we'll, I think first and foremost, as we allow her to kind of get, familiar and acclimated and her feet under her desk, then we'll look at, kind of role divisions and what things she becomes, I think more of that key lead on versus myself. And certainly I'm completely open to that. I think that, as Barry, you indicated, she has been well versed, right, in terms of the history and challenges, and because of that, not necessarily in spite of that, is one of the reasons why she selected to serve. So that's exciting to me, that we have someone that wants to be a rebuilder and a builder and a planner, right, for where we need to go. And getting out of the reaction piece, I think, is a common thread I've said, and I've heard from all of you, right, as we've discussed even over these past few months. So, I think over the next probably month or two, you'll see both of us. And then I think as I think Jen, gets up to speed and we have that better division labor. Otherwise, then sometimes you'll see her and sometimes you might see me. But I think for the CHHS, functions, then certainly, she would become more of the primary, and I would be more in that supporting, role. One thing I do want to make sure is clear to all as we discuss that is that there is no desire on my part or the part of the administration this conversation and the important work of CHHS has to be elevated. I mean, it has to be kind of part of the important conversations at the mayor level, at the council level, because we know it's going to require some big moves. It's going to require some investment. It's going to require some investment that's from different sources than potentially we normally use, whether that be ARP or otherwise, and whether that be for housing or whether that be for sheltering. I mean, it runs the gamut. And we need all good, I think, input into that process to help make sure that those better plans emerge. And so, I think one of the things that I want to kind of, just start with there is that we are trying to kind of, co-host, along with the COC, but I think that, this board is an important part of this conversation as well, a planning retreat that we're trying to kind of structure for the 25th of January, where, you'll, if you haven't heard that already yet, then you will start hearing about it and get invites. But we certainly need broad participation in that, because we are trying to kind of look at an overall kind of roadmap, type, process in terms of how we, how we look at ourselves, kind of, regionally, all the way from keeping people in their homes, i.e. like the rent assistance programs, all the way through, the sheltering piece of it, and diversion needs, all the way through to the different levels of affordable housing that are needed. So, and the intent there is to, basically both show at least our best view of what current capacity is, as well as ask for goals for each of those categories. Because as I start developing this draft, of what that kind of roadmap looks like, there's like 13 different areas, right? And when we especially talk about mental health and substance abuse and these different areas. And I believe we need to start talking about numbers and capacity at each of those and how they play a role in the overall ecosystem. Because one of the challenges that we're hearing from the shelter providers is the fact that one of the reasons why our emergency shelter piece is so impacted is that people cannot progress to transitional housing. And even if, we had the Way Out Center fully open and operational, with the Salvation Army, that's just 60 beds. I mean, it will help, greatly, but it's just 60 beds. And so, and the permanent supported housing piece has pressure, and certainly, at 50 to 70% AMI, affordable housing has a ton of pressure, or lack of availability. And even when you get to the 80%, plus AMI, then there's still, they still would rather get market rate rents than have to do with, the vouchers for others. So I think that trying to look at the overall ecosystem is a huge important piece of this. And part of these planning retreats that we're all talking about, and we all do them, right? I mean, but I think that in my view, we need to do less of them in silos and more of them collaboratively, and try to be co-owners rather than sole owners of the problem. So that we can, again, in my view, we're here for the whole public discourse. But at the end of the day, you might have to kind of, you always have some people on ends of the spectrum, that might not be happy no matter which way it is. But that 90% in the middle, again, we have to, I think, listen, learn, and carefully plan, and then bring back to our decision makers and our funders, county, city, state, Fed, et cetera, what we see as the priorities for the community. And I submit to you that a lot of the plans and a lot of things that I've reviewed just over my past 4 or 5 months here, the plans are aspirational, but they don't have metrics and goals in terms of numbers. Or if they do have numbers, they talk about those served versus outcomes. And I think that we need to, I think, have groups like this, and the COC board equivalents and the CHCBD board, or whatever the county one. Sorry, Kathleen, I always get that acronym wrong. I think that how do we all kind of look at that entire roadmap and then start looking at more of a sustainable and joint funding model to get some of that work done? Because to me, rather than arguing about, city does homelessness and county does housing, okay, well, how do we all chip in, right, and put money into this overall ecosystem, and then where do we still have gaps? And if those gaps are in areas that you as a community are saying are still priorities, well, then to me, that's a story that we have to tell. That's information that has to percolate up to our electeds and our funders to say, hey, look, we have a problem with diversion space for mental health or for drug addiction, and we have this many, and we believe we need to have this many, and that's 200 more. So what do we do about that? And then how do we take bites out of those elephants? One of the things that I believe that we need to fundamentally come out of this kind of planning effort with is going to be again, joint strategies. Just pulling one lever in one of those areas doesn't always help us. It might fix that one little area for a while, but the reality of it is I think there's more connected about this ecosystem than is disconnected. And so if we want to help the emergency shelter system in some way, we need that 1,000 or 2,000 more affordable housing units, right? So there's people that actually, that they have some place to progress to. And if we miss one of those steps in between, it honestly creates a bottleneck or a challenge on either side of it. And so that's what the intention is trying to kind of put this out. And the intent of this first draft, right, folks, I just want to make sure this is very clear, is not to say that it's the final vision. I think one of my observations about all of this is it's very hard to, other than an SPD member mentioning a number, right, it's been very hard to kind of, galvanize people to propose numbers. Well, I mean, so let's put a number out there, and then let's have it be debated. Let's have it be argued. I mean, even on the homelessness thing, the 5,000 person report versus, the capacity. Okay, well, let's put those numbers out there and let's actually discuss them, and then let's empower a group or one of your subcommittees or otherwise to go away with the point in time count and the other data that we have and the economic and census data, and actually come back with recommendations on what that planning number should be for the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever else it is. Because, I think what's one thing that's tremendously hard for staff, let's realize that without those numbers, we are guessing and we're building plans, that basically are without that goal or that I think call out. So and to a degree, it's hard for us to kind of plan economically in terms of what the costs are going to be, because certainly it's a different cost to do something for 100 people than it is for 500 people or for 1,000 people. And so how can we be fair to, to the funders or to the electeds or to our budget folks and CFOs, et cetera, unless we can calculate some accurate costs so that we know what type of financial problem we're trying to solve at the same time. So I really would invite and ask for I think the broadest participation we can have in these planning sessions as we put them together, because at the end of the day, part of this is general, but the other part is to kind of be breakouts. And what I would suggest is, this board has, honestly an active role in the overall health of the region, but also you have some specific areas that I know that you've championed. And so I think making sure that representation is on, those work committees that get formed, right, is the same work, right, that we're trying to do. So why not align it and just carry it forward? So any questions on that before I kind of move on? Because I think that's, again, something that you'll start seeing, I think, show up on your calendar. Okay, so the next piece I'll cover off on, because I know it's topical and newsworthy, is kind of the warming center and the kind of the winter response piece. I think you've all seen. I think the numbers or the conversations that are going on, and the steps we took on the warming center piece. When it's been good. There's been impacts there certainly, and it is a tough thing to constitute for a short period of time. That said, we're operating on borrowed time simply because the facilities remain our longstanding issue. We can resource everything else, but we do not have a location. And very quickly, just based on events and other priorities, with the convention center and the things they have going on, we're not sure if we're going to be able to extend past the Sunday date that we have now. But there still obviously is a population there that needs to be planned for. So it all comes back to location. So I would ask that in your variety of roles, full time and this or otherwise, as you have any again examples or otherwise as it relates to locations that we can activate, I think we can help resource and the rest of it. Now, Betsy, frankly, this will come back to some financial requests at some period of time, but we're all mindful of that. And I don't think really it's a money or political will issue as much as it's the fact that we have not been able to get an active location. And I think that where we set this up initially to serve up to 150 people, we quickly, obviously saw that it was a need greater than that. So, I think that is a challenge. That's a challenge we're actively working on day to day. We're also looking at potentially making an emergency management request, both to the county and the state, in terms of not being able to find a facility. That's one of the options or avenues that we're probably going to take. But that doesn't necessarily, guarantee us something for Sunday. So that is an active problem we're trying to solve. And I just wanted to make sure that, that there's transparency out there, for that. And then if, there's any, options, commentary, otherwise, I'm happy to take that on board. And you're muted, Barry.
I throw my hands up. I wish there was a solution. I know how incredibly complex and difficult it is. I wish there was a good exit plan for the warming center when it closes. I don't know.
Yeah. So and like I said, I just want to make sure that everyone understands. There's like hundreds of conversations that have happened. There's brokers, real estate brokers that have involved. There's, direct conversations that have happened with building owners and landowners, that we all know their names, right, in the region here. And we've revisited, whether it be the kind of the tent city or the piece of ground with, some type of pop-up store. All those things are under review. The challenge really is services and power and health, safety, and in a lot of those, kind of challenges that continue to exist. So we're mindful of those. I wish I had a better, rabbit in my hat to pull, but we'll continue to work on that, basically until we have something that we can advise. Pending any other questions on that, I'll move on and I'll try to fast forward through the rest of this. All right, so I think just in terms of other items that we have, going, just to be, I think, next week, we still don't have it scheduled yet. But we are, I think, we're working, between, I think, Robert and Megan, on our, team for the outreach side to set up an outreach meeting. In one of the outcomes that we're looking for that might involve, this board is the fact that we are looking potentially to do like a pilot RFP, where we look at how we kind of try to empower some type of navigation aspect. This is something that I've talked about with the Homeless Coalition. Several of you have talked to me about it, in past, one-on-one conversations. The Mayor's Advisory Committee, group there has mentioned it, there. So I think that what we're seeing is the fact that people will potentially avail themselves maybe of one solution, but if that solution, if they're the 10th person in line that doesn't get served, right, then they basically just go to wherever they normally go, versus, trying to seek that second shelter or otherwise. Or they might have a service need, or they might have, and again, we got great partners out there, Frontier and Chaz, Providence, et cetera. But we're just seeing a kind of a challenge in terms of that coordination and navigation. So we're trying to put that group together to try to learn from them and see if is there something that we should try to activate as an RFP or as a pilot, to try to see if we can better help people navigate the system, and or do transportation or whatever other aspects we can do to kind of lower real or perceived barriers. So that's a conversation that we're going to try to get completed next week, and we can bring an update based on that. We're also at the end of the month continuing to do the point in time count, which is scheduled for, I think, the 27th of January. We got I think a great head of steam up on that, and we're going to be providing, I think, a short brief to the Homeless Coalition tomorrow on that, at their normal monthly meeting. One artifact I would just like to mention off of that is that we are also mobilizing part of that team tomorrow to go into the convention center and ask some of those point in time type questions. It's not going to substitute for the point in time count to any degree, but we have, again, got that good 200 or 300 people there in a controlled environment where we can try to ask some questions and better understand, and to a degree understand why they're availing. We still have, and again, I know it's controversial, but there's still capacity, in some other areas of the system, not in the quantity we need, but but we're still trying to better understand why are they not availing themselves of some of those other spaces that are in the system. And so I think the more we can understand about that, then the better we can try to do the mix and match. And part of that gets back to maybe what we need to do on navigation and or transportation. We're still working through staff recruitment. Again, Jen's on board, which is a huge addition. We've obviously got the other 4 individuals that have been hired, and we still have 6 vacancies that we're working on. A couple on the program management side, a couple on the grants and compliance side, and a couple on the housing side. So so we will continue kind of to do that work. And the program managers one is the one that's basically been out and posted, and so hopefully we'll be able to mature a couple of new hires out of that over these next couple of weeks, or at worst 30 days.
Eric, would
yes.
would it be possible? And I know that it's fluid, so I know that it might change as people in positions. But would it be possible to get an updated org chart, including what's open and what's currently being recruited for? But just like I'm uncertain for even our committees who they should be identifying as staff they should be working with and that sort of thing.
And Barry asked for that as well. So certainly we have it, and I'll probably also include some of the other options we're looking at. No decisions have been made, and certainly we were waiting for Jen to get on board to a degree to to kind of help be part of that that kind of review and look. But one example I have is that I know currently this will be an additional ask, but I think it will be able to be 100% grant funded. Is that we don't have a program manager for our emergency shelters. Well, that seems to be kind of crazy since that's where we spend a lot of time, right? And it's kind of additional duties for quite a few folks, and so so that's one of the ones that I think we'll try to activate sooner rather than later. So yes, it certainly can do that. So I think the last couple items I had here is that we obviously have I think a head of steam working on YHDP and kind of our youth services. That will kind of mature into I think probably its own RFP within the next week, where we're going to be looking for a coordination role full time. to do it. I think just based on the fact that we have, the vacancies we're still trying to fill, we think that the best and quickest way to activate that is to get one of our partners to kind of help step up and fulfill that role. And certainly there's a lot of expertise out there. So that's one thing that will be coming shortly. And there's obviously been ongoing conversations and will be on the coordinated entry process to both. I think address some of the diversity and equity issues that are seen, as it relates to either race or age, and try to help. I think broaden the capability for some that probably would be one of the ones that would honestly progress through the system back to kind of a more normal affordable housing or market rate housing capability on their own. In some cases they're almost like the least ones that we be able to kind of serve. And so I think I think there's already a group that's been working on that, and I know that they'll be bringing back some recommendations I think here over the next 30 days, and we'll make sure that you're included in that process, and some of you already are by virtue of some of the other roles you serve. And then lastly, I think one of the things I just want to make sure is on everyone's radar screen is that we're working on a kind of a massive overall report, and have been for the past month. It's going to probably take another week or two to complete, which is okay, all the grant sources we get, what programs it flows into, and what projects it goes out and serve. That's been a challenge, right, to be able to report on that information, and I think it's both a good educational tool in terms of all the work that's being done, because I don't think people in the community sometimes fully understand that. Plus, it will show us, I think, a little bit more in terms of the gaps or the challenges. One of those, which I will note today, is the fact that some of our ongoing operations, and VOA is in this category, the Cannon Street Shelter with the Guardians is in this category, but there's a few others too, are funded through ESGCV COVID funding that expires in June. And so we have a sustainable funding challenge that we have to do a better job in terms of how we line up multi-year funds to do things. And I think one of the artifacts of that is, and again, I don't know enough. I'm just saying this from my gut level. And Betsy, I apologize in advance because this will again hit the council, more than most. But if we're helping adjudicate $40 million worth of funding, of good things for our community off of grants, and but our general fund piece of that is 400,000, right? And I know that's for staffing and overflow and other type of things, but sometimes some of these things that we're working on are going to take some additional funding, and whether it be rental assistance, whether it be housing, or I believe that our appetite for solutions is greater than the current funding levels we have, and so ultimately part of this road mapping thing is also, as we talk about numbers, then translating that to dollars, so that if we're going to say we need 200 substance abuse beds, right? That some competent person that knows a lot more about it than I is doing the math and developing that into that $1 million figure that it needs to be. So ultimately, we can hand that back, to our legislative boards and our policy advisors and everyone else, so that we can start beating the drum for funds or for investment or whatever else we need to do. So that's the other part of this roadmap, because I think we have a sustainable funding, and that's one of the reasons why we're in reaction mode most of the time. And I believe that if we want to do a better job universally for the system and for the community, we need to have a more sustainable picture, which also means we might have to be a little bit more judicious about the decisions we make. And so I offer that up just as a perspective, I think, on what over the next 6 months we'll need to talk about. That concludes the report. Sorry I'm 2 minutes over. Happy for any questions. And Catherine?
If I could ask very quickly, you went over something really fast and I didn't get it. You said that you're looking at hiring a coordinator for a program. It was right after you talked about
for our shelters. So
the shelter program. Okay, great,
yeah,
perfect.
Because like when Margaret Hinson left, I didn't realize that she was really also the kind of the main person that was kind of coordinating with our emergency shelters. And it wasn't necessarily her job or role. She had just kind of picked it up and done it. God bless her. But it's also because, again, one of the challenges I think for the CHU's staff in the past, right, we're working on this, is that people had like 8 hats. And one of the hats maybe was also, but I honestly think that our shelters are so important and those relationships are so important, then why not have a person to coordinate those activities?
Thank you.
Pending any other questions, I am happy to pass it back to Adrian.
Any other questions for Eric? And I do once again want to thank you for the continued updates, the weekly updates that we're getting. Those are really informative and really helpful in I think getting a more holistic sense of what's going on in the department, which is something that had been lacking in the past.
So thank you for that. So let me ask, because that is not without cost. You know, by the way, in terms of people's time. So one of the things that Brian Walker and I were talking about is when we can, because it was the plan, you know, to after the first year to kind of go to something a little bit less than once a week. Would once every 2 weeks be okay? Or is it, I mean, because again, it does take staff time, right? And you know, I am trying to find that right line between communication, but also, you know, trying to get good work done.
Speaking for myself, I think once every 2 weeks, and as things get more stable and we're, you know, people aren't filling so many different roles and we're hearing these more holistic reports during meetings, even once a month would make sense. But once every 2 weeks would be fine. They've just been helpful to get that fuller picture, I think, that we've been lacking in the past.
Thank you for that. Yep.
And I'd echo what Adrian said. I really appreciated them, like, you know, I don't know, whenever they started a couple of months ago, because things were really intense and people were dropping like flies, and like, what the heck's going on? So it was very helpful to get those. And I'll agree with Adrian. As things get more stable, as people get more in positions, as, you know, as it's, yeah, it does not, because I realized that, yeah, those things take a lot of time. When I read through them, I thought, boy, somebody's spending a lot of time doing this. When I hope they're balancing their workload, because there may be other things they need to do. But yeah, I know you got to balance it. But there's my response.
Thank you for your input, Adrian and Barry, on that. It was originally started when there was a lot of turnover, and I think a lot of people kind of wondered what was going on. And so this was started out of transparency to let people know that work is still continuing. It might be multiple people or single people taking on multiple jobs while vacancies were out, but it was started, you know, to let people know what's going on, that work is still taking place. So thank you for your input on that.
And I would just add that, and yeah, Brian, thank you for your work on that. I would just add that that snapshot, you know, can be helpful, and whether you continue with this monthly or every 2 weeks, or if it's just at the board meeting. But one of the things that really helped me was that it did a really good job of showing what the full department was doing, because sometimes in our board meetings we can get kind of siloed and not understand what the full department is doing, and sometimes, you know, a lot of things we don't need discussion about because they're not necessarily under our purview, but it's helpful for us to understand that whole picture. So keeping that communication, whether it's in the email or it's at the meetings in the future, will be helpful to continue, I think.
And I believe there's activities going on even beyond what's in the update. You know, as I've been getting up to speed at the city, I've been trying to grasp a little bit about everything, and there's things going on beyond that scope even. So beyond what Eric was talking about and beyond the CHHS update. So.
And I would say I really love that it's written, because it's easy then to share and refer to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, we'll do the 2 week, and then certainly if there's questions, we'll be happy to field them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eric. And yeah, thank you. The transparency and the communication work has been really helpful when things were, as Barry was saying, when things were not very stable. It's been helpful in helping us understand and recognize how we fit in with this overall story. And we never doubted that the city staff was working very, very hard. That was never in doubt, but it's still nice to see, as you were talking about, Eric, see what actually was being done, so that we can also, as Anne said at the beginning, one of the things that that we've come to do as board members, as we've come to really appreciate the hard work of the staff in the city, is to be able to champion that and to be able to push back when we're hearing some of those questions, when all the eyes are on the CHHS department, but not a lot of the information or knowledge is accurate. It gives us the opportunity to be able to talk about the great work that you all are doing. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate the help because there certainly has been and will be areas where we just need help on, right? And you know, and you know, the more we can do that as a community, the better we're going to be.
Thanks, Eric. Betsy, do you have any city council updates you would like to share?
I'll be brief, but first of all, thank you, Eric. You were the right person at the right time to step into the slot. I don't know if you can see it. It is my office fire extinguisher. If you feel the need to use it, it's just on my desk. Come get it, okay? You know, because we all got the fires going on. So thank you. Thank you for your leadership. Also, I want to quickly pick it back on Eric. So the program manager, and you know this, you should probably start putting together a pilot and get that before me so we can kind of get that funded and move it ahead sooner than later. And the Homeless Coalition. Now, Eric, as a council member, I don't really hear anything about that. So I don't know what the council representation is on that side and who's sitting at that conversation, but it has never gotten back to me. So whoever that is.
Betsy, you don't want to know who's on that,
Okay.
Homeless Coalition leadership team.
Okay, all right, I'll take that.
No, I'm joking.
No, I'll take it. I'll take it. So, so thank you. I know it's convoluted. A couple of things.
But Barry's one of the leadership. So
Okay.
so we can certainly include you in those conversations and happy to do so.
Right. So one thing I will lead off with is the other council member that will be joining CHHS will be Jonathan Bingle. He'll be coming to the next meeting. And the first thing he said was he cannot go to the Homeless Coalition, Barry, but he sent his legislative assistant, Nicolette Ochiltree. So she will be there. So hopefully we can start getting some type of continuity for communications back and forth of what's going on. So that would be great. As you know from.
So did you say Jonathan Bingle's assistant is Nicolette Ochiltree?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I know we're all amazed, but she's doing a great job. I know, shocking. Okay, stop. I want to move on to, that we actually allocate the first chunk of money from the ARPA funds, 14 million. So any of you all have any time, because we'll be needing RF folks in each of these buckets of money as we get them written to evaluate. So we're hoping to get the RFPs written in the next 4 to 6 weeks and get them out there in the community. And then we'll be looking for community members in each of those categories: homelessness, housing, and work employment, the arts, to come on and help us make those decisions going forward. So it is a lot. I'm hoping the legislature will come to us with some more money in this session around rental assistance. Had a conversation with Representative Ormsby. That kind of is a hot topic still, based on what's going on in the economy, and the state still has a significant amount of money of ARPA funds available also. So I'm optimistic. That's really all I have. I just look forward to this year. And again, I think there's been a great reset in CHHS as we go forward, and I just look forward to being a part of it. And I'm a fiscal conservative, but I'm a bleeding heart social worker. So you got the right person on the right committee when it comes to asking for money. So just say, I'm a champion of that. Into my report.
Council member.
Thanks so much, Betsy.
Question for you. Just sorry, Adrian. Question for you really quick. So really eager and excited, I'm sure everybody is, for the RFP for those ARPA funds. And I'm wondering, is there anything written up around like a request for community members to participate on the review for that, and also a conflict of interest policy?
Jerry, we are working on that now. You're just ahead of us. We just approved it 2 days ago. But yes, I'm working with Alex Gibalisco, our equity person, and we had that conversation today. So absolutely.
Awesome. Looking forward to seeing that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Betsy? I just want to thank you for serving on this board for the last couple of years, and we're so excited that you're going to be continuing with us as well, and looking forward to having Jonathan join as well. But thank you so much for being engaged on this board. It serves an important purpose, and it's so helpful when our council members understand what it is that we're trying to communicate and trying to do here. And so thank you so much for that. Our next two updates would just be affordable housing and RFP. Affordable housing does not have anything on the table to this month, so we're not meeting, so we do not have an update. And I'm assuming that there's no, or Jerry, I'm assuming there's no update with RFP, given you just pulled together the meeting for yesterday. So I'm assuming there isn't anything additional at this time. Okay. Well, with that, we're coming at the top of the hour, but I would just like to, before we break, I would like to thank Anne for the time that she has served as first vice chair and then as chair and former chair. We're going to miss you in our executive committee meetings for sure. And your dedication to forego dancing to be at these meetings. I really appreciate it. I know, I think we've all learned quite a bit from you, Anne, and I just appreciate the service, and I'm glad we get you on the board for at least a couple more months, and on the RFP committee as long as we can keep you. So thank you so much for that, Anne.
Thank you, Adrian.
And with that, this will be my last time calling for a motion to adjourn as the chair of the CHHS board. So could I get a motion?
Whoa, that's big, but this is Jerry. I'll move to
Nice second.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand or say aye. Thank you all for another great meeting. It was great getting to meet Jen. Thank you. And we are here to help as well. I look forward to working with Barry to help, and with Jen to help with the transition for the new board executive committee. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great evening and happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.